As we begin our look at teaching economics in the elementary classroom, we're going to come back to this concept of human capital. We want to remember that it is the one resource that our students have the most control over. So it's really important that we instill in them an understanding of what it is and how they will use it in their schooling to develop themselves and to prepare themselves for a world where their human capital is going to determine their wealth. So here's our definition again of human capital. We've talked about that before. It's important that our students see the connection between their futures and all that they entail and their human capital. And that their human capital, of course, is going to be tied to the decisions that they're making in school. And so as teachers, we want to make sure that they see that connection. This is a great quote that we need to remember for our students, is that our choices determine who we are. This is some older information that at first you might say, well, gosh, that year is pretty dated, but this has stayed consistent for a very, very long time, and that is the relationship between education and the average earnings. And it's not to reflect that earnings are everything, but certainly as we evaluate our wealth and the value of our human capital, we can evaluate that through what it's worth in the marketplace, what it sells for. So here we see that we've got the dropout, right? And I think we've all seen these evaluations before, so we know this, but the dropout, of course, is at the lower end, earning less money. And as education increases, we can see that we can expect an increase in earnings that goes with that. And the range in between, of course, the numbers have changed slightly, but it's moved up at every range, and it remains the same relationship between these different things. So the upshot of a picture like that is that all of the things being equal, higher education and training lead to higher income. And on average, just put some numbers with this. Now, these are older numbers, but still, the relationship holds true. The high school graduate in a lifetime of earnings, meaning from age 18 to retirement age, which is averaged at about 60, a high school graduate can expect to earn $400,000. The college graduate can expect to earn $1 million. This is on average working all those years. The labor market has changed significantly over the years. It used to be that skills required were more mechanical, assembly line type skills. And as the markets have changed, how the economy has changed, the new labor market requires that you be a competitor in a global market and that you keep up with changing technology. The U.S. economy has had a lot of incarnations over the years as well, going from agricultural to really a knowledge-based economy through a series of changes. And even though you can't see that on this slide, it's not moving to show all those different steps, I'm sure that you recognize that throughout history, we've had different ways of organizing labor and using human capital. And it's important for our students to know this because we want them to see that this is a constantly changing and evolving process, and that they're going to want to prepare their human capital for whatever comes next. A table with some skills that might have been appropriate in one time versus another, the industrial age versus the information age. And we notice that technology change is something that in an information or knowledge age, which is where we are now, we would see that technology change is rapid and that competition is global and that what's produced now is more service-based, more information-based, and knowledge-based. And if you're not sure what that means, look around you at the types of jobs people do today. And you're going to find that most of the jobs that are done are all about servicing something that is based on spreading knowledge and information. The role of workers today is more likely to be in the design or engineering or management category rather than manual hands-on labor. The skill requirements, we'll look at some of those skill requirements, but they're very different. Employment itself is different. It's important for our students to know that where it might have been in the past that you had one employment with one employer for your lifetime, it's very common now for people to change jobs and careers quite often in their adult lives. And most important, the learning span. The learning span used to be that formal school took place and it had, this moment in your life. But today, the learning span is, of course, over the course of a lifetime because there's no stop to the learning. We live in such a time of information and growth, and everything's exploding around us, and we're constantly taking in new information. Some of the soft skills required are, of course, a smile, an attitude. These are things that everybody should learn as part of how they enter into the labor market. You should have these people skills, personal hygiene, being on time, dressing correctly for the job, being responsible, working in cooperation with others, work ethic, initiative. These are all of the soft skills that you must possess, regardless of what the field is. But what we want our students to understand about this is the principle of exchange. The principle of exchange is stated here, and it's that people will trade if they expect to gain more than they give. This we're going to explore later in the course as well, but this is an important thing to begin with our students at a very young age. Understanding this idea that people trade when they see that they can gain more than they give up in the trade. And this, of course, is especially important with employment. If you're going to go to an employer and say to them, I would like to be paid to work for you, they must view this as a beneficial exchange. They must look at this as if I'm going to get more from this experience than I pay, where the employee also has the same calculation. In the labor market, then employers are willing to hire workers if they expect to gain more from hiring them than they give up. Two mistaken ideas that people get when they go in to look for a job. One is that people will hire me if I'm super cute and have a great personality. Even if those things are true, people will hire you if they look at you and say, you will make my business better off. Another possible incorrect thought is that you don't need a high school diploma. We want to make sure our students really understand the difference between lifetime earnings of a high school graduate versus the lifetime earnings of a college graduate or somebody that has training beyond high school. And there's some other things associated with that as well. It's not just the difference in earnings. It's the likelihood of being unemployed. It's the likelihood of living in poverty and incarceration rates. All of these have strong correlations with the level of education. So we want to make sure that at every level our students are learning this and understanding the value of their human capital. This is a cute cartoon of a character named Jeremy. I don't know if you've ever seen the comic strip called Zits, but he's a high school senior. So here's Jeremy doing all these fun, cool things. And he said he's looking for a job and he can't find one. And he said, I have a variety of skills. Is it my fault that none of them happen to be particularly marketable? So what Jeremy didn't understand was that all these fun things that he can do are super neat, but they are not going to be useful in the labor market. So here's a question for you. Would you like $1 million? And we've already talked about how it is you earn $1 million, and that is by continuing your education after high school. And so I'm going to show you how to get $1 million. You have choices that you make in life, similar to how do you get $1 million? Well, which house would you rather have? And if you say house B, then chances are that there's a way that you can get there. House A, some of you may look at that and say, hey, it's isolated, it's quiet there. But most people, I think, would agree that house B seems more appealing as far as comfort. And just like the $1 million, it's about the choices you make. Which car would you like? Again, choices. Which vacation would you prefer? And this has to do with the choices you make. Which dog? That Fang is kind of terrifying looking. I don't even know if that's a dog, but I think it's pretty obvious that Fluffy would be the choice here. What kind of job do you want? Do you want one that is high paying, perhaps rewarding? Do you want one that is maybe not so exciting and fulfilling? And so, again, choices. And how are you going to get from where you are now, and this is for our students to think about, to wherever their choices lead them, to what it is they want to accomplish? And it all has to do with developing the human capital. That $1 million, the house, the dog, the vacation, all of that comes from the choices that they make as students, as young people. And this is why what we do is so important. We want to make sure that they understand that economics, the study of choices, is about getting them to their goals by using their scarce and valuable skills, and in particular, their scarce and very, very valuable human capital. So we're going to talk to them about getting the skills. What skills are those? Well, here's a table of some pretty recent skills identified as important in the 21st century. And they are, as you can see here, the basics, the thinking skills, the personal skills, the resources, using of resources, interpersonal, understanding systems, information, and utilizing technology. So all of these things are critical for our students, and we have a lot to do to teach them in their schooling years, their formal schooling. And it's so important that they understand the value of what they're learning and how it's going to impact their future. So some of the basic skills then: reading, writing, mathematics, listening, speaking. We want those to be well developed in our students. The thinking skills would be informed decision making, utilizing good decision making skills in our benefit cost analysis, knowing how to approach learning. That is sometimes a harder thing than most people understand, and that is, how do you go about the process of learning? And knowing how to do that has a lot to do with what is learned. Personal qualities: being honest, hardworking, respectful, self-motivated, trustworthy, all important. Resources: how do you use your resources? Now, again, our students are going to have primarily responsibility for their resource of human capital. So what we want to ask themselves is, how do you use you? Are you using your scarce and valuable human capital to its best and most productive use? Are you achieving your goals with it? And that's why having goals is so important. So we start with an understanding of that. But once goals are established, how are you using you to get where you want? So you see here some different alternatives, and clearly we want to guide our students to the alternatives that are going to bring them the most satisfaction and the most rewards. The interpersonal skills: working well with others, helping others to be successful, getting along with people who are not like you, being kind, trying to make others comfortable. All of these important skills in developing our human capital and taking us further in the labor market and in lots of other situations. Understanding systems. Students learn a valuable lesson about how to integrate into systems when they come to school, when they live in families, and then we teach them to go out into the world and participate in even larger systems. This is a huge part of what we do in schools, and we can really help our students at even a very young age understand how they fit into a system of a family, how they fit into a system of a classroom. And then we teach them, of course, to go out and be civic citizens, right, in our society, and then in their own workplace and larger experience in life. So integrating into systems is a very important skill that we teach them. We teach them about how to utilize information. Do you have the facts? Do you know where the facts can be found? Once you see facts, do you evaluate them? Do you listen to them? Can you differentiate facts and opinions? Another very important critical thinking skill. Our students must be able to gather information and analyze it and use it in a way that is meaningful to them. The technology they use, again, a huge important part of our students' lives, much more so than in past years. But now technology is all about knowing which tools to use, applying those to specific tasks, maintaining and troubleshooting, keeping up to date, and constantly using that technology to learn. And this is not just important for our students today. You probably recognize as a teacher or a future teacher that this is a huge part of where you're going in your career path. That technology is going to be a huge part of it, and knowing which tools to use is a big part of it. Knowing how to sift through all the information that's out there and available to you that gives you different advice. Know how to keep up to date, how to learn new things, how to search out information. All of this is going to be valuable to you. So you want to impart this to our students so that as they are learning through school, they're constantly engaging in this sort of thinking where they utilize technology and they understand how to make better use of it. So we can model that for them. So where do you get these skills? Well, skills, I should say, through education. It happens in school. We get so much of our socialization, of our learning, of our understanding of systems, of our development of these skills. So much of this happens in the classroom. So what we want to impart to our students then is the value of being in school. Why are you in school? To improve your incredible human capital. We start by telling them how important it is, what it is, how powerful it is. And then we remind them that they are in school to make that incredible package of human capital even more incredible, to live the good life, and to make themselves an even more powerful bundle of human capital. If you want a good income, you've got to make yourself scarce. So there's that word scarcity again. We talked about it before. It means you can't have everything you want. But to earn a good income, we need to connect that concept of scarcity with the work that our students do. So we say to themselves, if you want to have a good income, do something that other people can't. Make yourself scarce. Develop those marketable skills. Do the things that other people aren't always willing to do. Get more education, more training. Have a skill that is unique and scarce. Those of you that are bilingual, you are going to find that that scarce ability to speak two languages fluently is going to be very beneficial and will probably either help you get work or result in higher pay. And ask yourself, which skills are likely to be marketable? Our students should start to develop an understanding at an early age of which skills they possess are valuable, which ones can be marketable. It's not that some skills like Jeremy and the hacky sack, some skills are interesting and they're fun and they're valuable in lots of ways, but we need to have them understand what is marketable so that they can maximize their use of human capital, their human capital. To compete in a global economy, our students will need these skills. Because the economic competition is now everywhere in the world. People are working online. People are working across national borders. In order to be competitive, our students are going to have to really develop these skills, and this needs to start at a very young age. So when our students look in the mirror, they should see an incredibly powerful package of human capital. And I hope that they hear that chant, I'm an incredible hunka human capital. I hope they hear that when they look in the mirror, because they need to see that and they need to understand the truth of this, and that is they have this amazing ability. They have a responsibility to develop it in school, and it's going to make a huge difference in their lives. They need to understand that only they can develop their human capital. Nobody else can do it for them, just like nobody else can give them knowledge or self-esteem. Nobody else can give them human capital. That must be developed. It must be developed with an eye towards what's meaningful about it. So only our students can do this. This is why we do the chant, I'm an incredible hunka human capital. They need to see that in themselves. School then is the investment that our students make in their human capital. And that's how it should be seen and understood. Some vocabulary from our lesson this week. Financial investment, we've already talked about this a little bit. Physical investment in human capital. We need to make sure that we see the difference here. When we talk about investment, some people get a picture in their mind of a stock or a bond. That's not what we're talking about. Physical investment is when businesses purchase something for their business. But what we're talking about specifically when we say investment in human capital is this idea that we are going to develop our skills and knowledge. We want our students to really believe in that investment. So we want to be clear in our use of terminology. When we're investing in human capital, we're developing skills, knowledge, experience, and personal qualities. This happens in a variety of ways. In school, specifically, homework and study are investments in human capital, that knowledge, that understanding. Human capital increases the quantity and quality of your alternatives in the future. And this is the key. It's not always easy for our students to look into the future and anticipate how this is going to benefit them. This is where we come in. So it's important that we're constantly reminding them that this very important investment that they're making will improve the quality of their lives. And we need to constantly bring that to their attention. Some stories that are available to help illustrate this for our students are found in Blackboard with this assignment, specifically Richard Wright and the library card. And I want you to go through this story. Like I've mentioned that you want to go through stories. Perhaps read it once just for the story itself, to take it in so that everybody's enjoying it and listening fully without stress about what am I trying to learn from this. Then maybe the second time through, ask yourself or your students some questions about what this really meant. Richard Wright had a unique experience. He was at a specific time in history, and hopefully your students can relate to what was going on then and why people were separated and why some people were treated differently than others. And I think some good questions can be drawn from this and some understanding of history. But what you see in this story is how Richard Wright developed his human capital in the face of obstacles to that. Minty, another great story about young Harriet Tubman and her schooling. Again, beautiful story, well told, and talks about schooling. And in Minty's case, her challenge, her obstacle, was that formal schooling wasn't available to her. So what did she do instead? And notice that in the absence of schooling, still, she developed her human capital. Tomás and the library lady, this one is amazing. And by the way, the main character, Tomás, is our current president of Cal State San Bernardino. So it's Tomás Morales. And this is such a great story. And I think it's so cool that we have this connection to him. And he's a really great guy, a really inspiring story here. And so again, somebody who wasn't able to formally develop human capital, but found a way to do it anyway. And more than anything else, another story of a young person who was denied the opportunity to get formal schooling and yet developed human capital. And all of this is so good for our students to see. They learn the history. They learn the differences between people. They see that people experience some terrible things and yet manage to understand the value of developing themselves. Jamal, another story that you will listen to about how Jamal spends his day doing different things and how he develops himself throughout the day. Just a regular day for Jamal. Finally, we have a quote here from Malala Yousafzai. I said to myself, Malala, you must be brave. You must not be afraid of anyone. You are only trying to get an education. You are not committing a crime. This is an amazing young woman. She was a 17-year-old, youngest winner ever of the Nobel Peace Prize. And she spoke out for universal education, in particular, women's education in Pakistan, which was, for the most part, denied to women. All women were not encouraged to learn, were not allowed to learn in the Pakistani system. The Taliban punished her, shot her 3 times, point blank, in an effort to keep her from advocating for women. And in spite of that, she continues her crusade to educate women. And she's been celebrated by the world community. And even then, the Taliban continues to try to harm her, to try to stop her. And she's quite an inspiration for women, and the understanding that human capital is something that people want to develop, that knowledge is something that people hunger for. And she's a really great modern day example of this continuing effort to become educated, to develop human capital in the face of obstacles. If you want to do a little research on her, also you could go to this website and it will give you a pronunciation of her name. So if I said it wrong, you will be able to hear that if you go to this link. All right, so that is our look at human capital. I hope you enjoy the stories. I hope you connect all of the stories to the learning, and I hope that you are able to impart to your students the understanding that developing human capital is an obligation, but also a privilege that they have, and that it will take them some really wonderful places. Until next time.